I introduce the topic with two maps I have seen last week at ISOF in Copenhagen to illustrate the importance of methodological issues in science policies. These maps are not gendered at all. They represent the scientific production plus the interaction between papers or some scientific writings. So this is the first map. The source of this map is the Web of Science. And you see that the human and social sciences are in the lower right corner, and they are a little bit like Tasmania. They are very marginal. This is now the second map. So again, it's a map of the scientific activities with interaction. Again, you have connections, but then you have another data source. It is the requests recorded by scientific portals. And on that map, you see that now as human and social science, which are in white and yellow, are in a central position, completely at the center of the map, and are more or less everywhere. So it gives you a completely different view on the position and the activity of human and social science in the whole scientific activity. So, is it the same maps of science? It is the same reality which is described, scientific papers with interactions, but from different sources. One is the Web of Science, with massive representation of scientific journal dominated by natural science. The other is the web portal user. It provides different perspectives and different outputs. On one, human and social science are Tasmania. On the other one, they are at the heart of the science. What does it mean? It means that translating the real world into numbers, maps, indicators, and so on, is essential to provide monitoring tools for policymakers. But it also creates a new social reality, new spaces for equivalence and comparison, and new evidence and instruments of governance. This is why I think methodological issues are so important also for our topic when we measure gender equality in science. Again, it reconfigures the translation into numbers, does not construct a reflection of the world, it transforms the world and reconfigures it in another way. This process requires discussion and consensus on adopted convention, and at the level of policymaking, it creates decision to improve indicators and ranking, which does not always imply improving the experience under measurement. So for us, not always improving gender equality, in fact. So you see what is at stake. So I'm back now to gender research, because we are in a hurry. What are the challenges we face? Our starting point here will be the Gender Time Project, a 4-year project funded by FP7 about implementing gender action plans in 8 different European institutions. And I am in that project responsible for the methodology with Professor Silvana Badaloni. The methodological issues we face are first the data quality, the quality of our data, then the samples and the sources we can access, the classification and the standards we have, and that's never the same from exactly the same from a country to another. The index and indicators we want to have in all countries or just locally. The visualization we can provide, and the way we can integrate our gender measures in existing standards and indicators, which is, I think, very important for their sustainability. What do we measure? in that project and in general. In fact, when you say we measure gender equality, basically you measure two sets of things. Either actions, you implement usually gender action plans, so you need to have a description of the action and the implementation progress. And on the other hand, you measure results, impact with very different dimensions. You can measure the atmosphere, the gender culture. You measure facts about human resources, positions, salaries, careers. You measure access to the resources, to the funding, people who apply, people who success. You measure also the gatekeepers. Who are the gatekeepers? In which committees? How is it gender balanced? You also can measure gender production, scientific production. Who writes papers? How many? Who write books? And so on. And finally, you also measure the gender dimension of research. So that's a lot of things to measure. And in addition, between those two spheres, the gender gap, the gender action plans, and the result they produce, we don't really know what causality we have. There is a sort of black box. And we must also take into account the fact that what we are doing in the gender action plan probably interacts with all the environment and within the environment. So I will go back to that later. So now if I go back to gender time, how do we measure? So we have sets of measured gender action plans. Some of them exist for years with more or less results and are difficult to evaluate because of multiple interactions and long-term effect. So finding the right tool is crucial, and we all think that it should become part of the day-to-day management. We have in all those countries in the gender time projects basically 3 sets of data and 3 monitoring tools for each of them. First, to measure more or less the atmosphere, we have an annual cultural survey based on Athena Swan, so it's an online survey, multiple choice. We have a systematic collection of data on the staff situation. It comes mostly from the human resource management, and some is uncollected. And finally, we have interviews and focus groups on selected topics. The experiments which are ongoing are, so first, a reflection on our sources, the classification we use and how we can compare, and a reflection on some instruments we could use for each set of data. To describe our action plan, we are trying now we try large tables, database, and it was very heavy and not very flexible. So we are now trying something else. We are trying descriptions with text plus tags, and through the tags, you can find the topic you're looking for. You can cross different tags to find what you're looking for. We'll see if it's working. To measure the atmosphere, we try to create a barometer inspired by the Athena survey. The idea is to score the answer and to check that all the answers go in the same direction, to score and to provide a sort of barometer. And for the human resources data, we will take our inspiration from the glass ceiling index in the she figures. So in that case, we will be able to compare our numbers to the she-figure numbers, and maybe we'll try to have some declination of this glass ceiling index, but I think it will be our basic tool. For the other topics, for the moment, we have nothing very, very new. And we plan in the future to do also something about scientific production and gender in research. And we'll take our inspiration from bibliometrics. The main gaps we are facing. The first gap, I think, is granularity. So we have no standards to describe and to measure actions and to know if it's huge, if it's small, if it's local, and so on. Second major gap is that when we measure our actions, we should also measure the interaction with the environment, because when you swim with the stream, you swim much easily than when you have to swim against the stream. And so if the stream is, say, a new EU policy with Horizon 2020 asking for more gender in research, so the stream is with you. But if the stream is budget cutting and austerity, maybe the stream is against you. So maybe the measures were good, but if the stream against you is too strong, you have the impression that it doesn't work. And on the reverse, you can have the impression it works, but in fact, it's just because the stream is a positive one for you. Second big gap, it is the time frame. How do we measure the long-term effect, and do we try to measure an instant situation or an evolution? So that's another basic problem. So these were some new insight, and because I'm late, I will finish with the recommendations. I think it is the most important thing. We have all the jigsaw pieces, but we need to fit all the pieces of the jigsaw together. This is why we need collaboration with specialists specialists in gender index, barometer, statistics. I am thinking to the people in Vilnius who created the European Index for Gender Equality, people working on the she-figures, or people working in Eurobarometer, so which has nothing to do with gender specifically, but they're good specialists in statistical data. We need to work with people who are specialized in research evaluation, and I'm thinking in bibliometrics or scientometrics. People who work on data visualization, so that was the two maps you have seen at the beginning. And of course, all this community, people who work on gender issues in the academia with also qualitative approach. Thanks for your attention.